Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Tuesday, and that means Tag Tuesday. And this particular Tag Tuesday, the flags are at half-mast in our little corner of BookTube because a great series of tags is coming to a close. And Jim at Jim's Books and Reading and Stuff has been doing alphabet tags, one letter at a time, throughout the whole of the English alphabet, and he has finally reached the end. The last tag in that series, he combines the letters Y and Z into one tag, the YZ tag. And I thought we'd just go through those prompts. I'll leave a link to Jim's video down below. The first prompt is Y is for YA, young adult literature, which is the bedrock and foundation of all of BookTube. It's not the essence of BookTube anymore, but once upon a time it was the only thing you could find. How would you rank the following popular YA books? And he lists three: The Fault in Our Stars by John Green, The Book Thief by Markus Zusak, and The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And here, I don't know that I would rank them in three steps, because The Fault in Our Stars and The Hunger Games are both abysmally written. They're written not only for small children, not young adults, but for small children, but also for small children who've been dropped on their head one too many times. They're almost incoherently bad, no matter how popular they are with their fan base. If you go to them knowing nothing about them, maybe knowing that John Green is popular or that The Hunger Games was made into a movie, but nothing else, and you just start reading the book, you're going to be flabbergasted that this even exists at all. And then a light year away from those is The Book Thief, which is not only better than The Fault in Our Stars, that's not that hard. Me writing out the text of this tag on my tablet actually produced a better block of prose than anything that's located in The Fault in Our Stars. But also a great book on its own. The Book Thief is a great book on its own. So that's how I'd rank them. I'd rank The Book Thief as well worth your time. And then, so distant you can barely see it, these other two pieces of crap. So let's move on. Then Z's, what do you call the last letter of the alphabet? Z, Z, or something else? Well, being a longtime DC Comics fan, I of course refer to it as Zod. A few countries begin with Y and Z, like Yugoslavia, Yemen, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and Zaire. Have you read a book set in a place beginning with Y or Z, or by an author from a country beginning with Y or Z? I didn't want to, this is the last echo of this persistent questioning form that has happened in these tags, where you have to remember or search out the nationality of your author, and I don't tend to do that. So instead, I didn't want to just pass the question by. So instead, I came up with a short list of recommendations along these lines, with only one exception. For Yugoslavia, of course, I want to take the chance to recommend Black Lamb and Grey Falcon by Rebecca West, especially for Nonfiction November. This is a huge thing. It might last you all the way to the next Nonfiction November. It's a big book, but it's fantastic. Just fantastic. One of the 4 or 5 greatest works of nonfiction in the 20th century. Then for Yemen, I want to recommend another big book. This is Tim McIntosh Smith's big book, The Arabs, which partially deals with Yemen, and which is really, really good. I think it might even be in paperback now, and it's well worth your time. It's a terrific, big, sweeping omnibus volume, also for Nonfiction November. Then for Zambia, a little bit of a tougher sell here. This is a book by Delia and Mark Owens called The Eye of the Elephant, in which the two main characters, it's nonfiction, the Owenses, go to Zambia in hopes of finding a cleaner, healthier, better life, and they come to know the local elephants in all of their wonder, in all of their amazement. I myself have a healthy regard for the fact that an elephant can flip a Range Rover into the air without much effort, but nevertheless, I recognize them for what they are, an extremely complex other sentient species on Earth, and a heavily hunted one, an incredibly heavily hunted one, and you're going to have to make your peace with whether or not that's worth your time to read, because that element very much enters into the eye of the elephant. It's a very big part of, and the Owenses don't pull back in how they describe it. So it's a wonderful book, but it's a tough one. Then we get to Zimbabwe. I'm afraid Zimbabwe has been recently, in the last 10 years, Zimbabwean authors have been guilty of so many crimes in Steve's lexicon of literary crimes that I actually can't get rid of it. I can't get around that for the time being until I read a really great Zimbabwean novel or nonfiction work in some future year. I'm going to have to skip Zimbabwe. That brings us to Zaire. And for Zaire, I want to recommend a book called East Along the Equator by Helen Winternitz, which is very touching. It's travel literature, and pretty much explicitly so, but it is very touching. It's very well done. I don't know if it's in print, but if you can find a copy, it's worth your time. And Zaire features in it. Then we have Y is for Yeats, William Butler Yeats. Who is your favorite Irish poet? And as Jim points out in his video, that's a large number of poets, a large number of them, many of whom I would say, I'd have to check with Jason Harrigan, but I would argue that most of them have never been translated into English. But for this, I want to pick Evan Boland. Just recently died. Her poetry never fails. Not only to send that shiver of immediate personal recognition through you that all the great poetry does, even if the poem is technically about something that you've never experienced, you still have that shiver of, I know this. I know this. Not only that, but also because her poems are just formally beautiful. I just love them. I don't have a big, fat, collected Evan Boland. I wish I did. I'm sure that one exists in the UK. I doubt that it exists in the United States, or maybe ever will. But if it ever does, I very much want one. Then why is for YouTube? Well, it would be, wouldn't it? What channels do you watch apart from BookTube channels? I watch a lot of BookTube. A lot of BookTube. The only thing that saves me from the amount of BookTube that I subscribe to, that I watch, is how little content the rest of you put out. You don't put out 5 videos a day. Otherwise, I'd be completely buried. I would have to cut back on my subscription list. Instead, you poor little daffodils are lucky if you get out 1 video a month. You look exhausted by the end of 10 minutes. But I also watch a lot of YouTube that isn't BookTube. A lot of it. My interests are fairly broad. I want to list just 3 here, and I'm not sure if I've mentioned these before, but I'll give them a mention just again anyway. The first is Novara Media, the cute little communists at Novara Media. It's a hard scrabble grassroots UK media channel on YouTube. They do live streams on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of mostly the latest news from the UK. They came on my radar because Michael Walker, who's their main host, was just increasingly excellent week after week in 2020 about COVID-19. So I would have been interested anyway, because all of their commentators are fantastic, especially Ash Sharkar, who's just incredible. You can hold her own on any subject and is always interesting to me. But so I probably have watched anyway, but the thing that brought it to my attention is that even with all of the mainstream channels that I was watching, the place that was satisfying me the most about balance and intelligence of coverage of COVID-19 was Novara Media, was Michael Walker on Novara Media. That's what started, and then that formed a habit. Then the next is Simon Dan. I've watched this channel grow from just a few subscribers to the behemoth that it is today. Another British guy who just talks about science in a very engaging way, and who made his bones on YouTube by bashing snake oil salesmen, scientific fraud, science deniers, and he still does that regularly, and it's well worth watching. He's got a very dry sense of humor. And then the last one is 2 guys from India who do a tech channel called TechWiser, which is amazing, incredibly rapid fire. They know everything there is to know, and they do concentrate a lot of their content on what people in India can find in stores in India, what's restrictive to India and what's not, that sort of thing. But they also have a much broader approach. I found a lot of fascinating stuff through them. They're both very young. Of course, in my mind, so is Simon Dan and every single last person associated with Novara Media. They all look incredibly young to me. But it is depressing as that is, they're also consummately knowledgeable, so I'll take it. I'll definitely take it. Then Z is for Zero. Have you read a book about nothing in particular? Not only have I read a book about nothing in particular, but it's the biggest book ever written by anyone on any subject, and it starts with the letter Z. It is a book called Zimbabwe. Someone made the drastically maniacal decision to translate Zimbabwe into English, and a publisher did it in America, and I was asked to review it. I reviewed Zimbabwe. I read the thing. It's this big. It's like 10,000 pages long, and it's totally insane. Not only is it not about anything particular, it's not about anything in general either. It's just an insane, enormous rant full of delusion. I have no idea why any publisher would ever publish it, and yet there is now an edition in English, at least one, that is relatively unabridged. So Zimbabwe, I do not recommend it. Then Z is for zombies. Do you have a favorite book about zombies or the zombie apocalypse? I do, and I trust that all of us have the same favorite book, the single greatest book ever written. I refer, of course, to World War Z. If that is not your favorite zombie movie, you may be a zombie yourself. Then Z is for Zootopia. Have you a favorite book where the characters are animals, anthropomorphic or otherwise? Here I was reminded of this book. I do have one. I don't know that it's within reach. It is Life on Earth by David Attenborough, which I have in a big, oversized, heavily illustrated hardcover. But I noticed just the other day on someone's channel, was it Shelley Swearingen? Or I don't remember whose channel it was. It was just the other day I saw somebody hold up what looks like a UK trade paperback of Life on Earth with a beautiful design, a white cover with a little green frog on it, and that's all. And I immediately wanted it. I immediately want that edition, even though I have a big illustrated edition. But whether I ever get that edition or not, I love the book. I think that I don't know if there's any truth to the rumors that have always attended David Attenborough's books, that they are heavily helped, that he has a lot of help in crafting the prose. I'm not sure that I believe that. The prose is very graceful, and I really like his books, Life on Earth, The Life of Birds, all that sort of thing, all of them. And they all have a broad cast of characters about animals. Then Z is for Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the best-selling Dude Bro nonfiction book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. What is the connection between Zen and motorcycle maintenance? The only connection between Zen and motorcycle maintenance is that if you connect the two of them, you can form a little funnel and siphon money out of credulous dude bros. There is no connection otherwise. There is no spiritual dimension to life. There is no supernatural element to existence. And imbuing typical guy stuff like motorcycles or cars or trucks or fly fishing rods or red checker tablecloths with spiritual significance is pretty much the ultimate gambit of a dude bro grift artist. And it worked. It absolutely worked. No one in this author's family will ever have to work a day for the rest of time on the sales of this one crappy book. And then there are bonus prompts, which I expect you all to do. Y is for yellow. Do you have a favorite yellow book? I do. The American hardcover edition of Christopher Hitchens' collection of essays, arguably, is bright yellow, which was a kind of a running joke between him and his Vanity Fair publisher at the time about yellow journalism. But you don't need to worry about the background joke to know that you're definitely going to spot it on the shelf. It's bright yellow. And it's also very good. Y is for year. Do you have a best reading year? Maybe the most books read or the best books read. Well, I always hope that every year will be my best reading year ever. We are at the end of the first week of November of 2021, even though it's 80 degrees outside and 97% humidity and is effectively summer. I'm going to walk Frida in my shorts and sandals in November. There should already have been several hard frosts. There should already have been a couple of snowstorms. Instead, it's clear that winter is not going to happen. It's clear that not only is winter not going to happen, but that summer is not going to go away. So, but even so, even in this year, in any year, I always hope that year will be my best reading year. We are at the end of the first week of November of 2021, and as of this morning, I've read 941 books. I think it's pretty safe to say that unless a safe falls on my head, I am certainly going to clear the four-digit hurdle. Then we'll see what happens from that in 2021. But I can always hope. Certainly, I've had a lot of great reading experiences in 2021, although I don't know for sure. I have lots and lots more books to read, but I've read a lot of books for this year, and I don't know for sure this is true, but I get the impression that 2021 will not be a standout year for reading in terms of the quality of the books, when you count the main focus of my reading, which is new releases in the American book market in the 15 or 16 genres that I read. That is what I do. I read a lot. I do a lot of rereading. I do a lot of rereading and older stuff reading in a much broader range, but that's the bulk of what I read. And I don't think that 2021 will stand out as a great year in the way that, for instance, 2018 did for me. But you never know. I could be wrong about that. Then Y is for yacht. Do you have a favorite book about sailing? There have been a million of them, including a few that I've recommended strongly in reviews of mine. But I'm here in Boston, and I know every single inch of Boston, every breath that every person in 19th century Boston took, every place they went, every brick, every building, every street, every thought, every food, everything. So I don't think the answer to this thing is particularly surprising. It is 2 Years Before the Mast by Richard Henry Dana, which I think isn't even a question of hometown pride. I think it stands up. I think it's a terrific reading experience for anybody, even now. But of course I'm going to say that. I would have to trade in my Bostonian card if I didn't. Then Z is for, or Y is for Yugoslavia. Have you read any books about the Yugoslavian Civil War? To the best of my knowledge, I never have. Then Z is for Roger Zelazny. Do you have a favorite book by Roger Zelazny? I do. It's Doorways in the Sand. Zelazny is a great writer. He's a fantastic science fiction and fantasy writer. I really, really enjoy him. He does have one writerly tick that bothers me. It turns up in a lot of his fiction, and sometimes in such operatic moments that its appearance makes the whole thing ridiculous, which is that he almost always insists on working in cigarettes. Tobacco addiction, just an ordinary addiction. So you'll have a story where there'll be a climactic scene where a character is watching through a starship portal as an entire world comes cataclysmically to an end with whole continents ripping off into space, and then the narrative will pause while the character lights a cigarette. It's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and it crops up everywhere in Zelazny's prose, everywhere. I am sure that even if it didn't bother me originally, I would still have noticed it. And Doorways in the... I'm not saying I like Doorways in the Sand because it has less of that. I like it mainly because I think it really packs in. Zelazny loved to pack his narratives, and Doorways in the Sand is really packed. It's a really packed narrative. I wish I had a copy of it. I don't think I have any Roger Zelazny at the moment. There was once upon a time a big omnibus volume of all of his Amber books, Nine Princes in Amber. I had that volume once upon a time. I had all the individual books once upon a time. I had a bunch of his other stuff too, This Immortal or Doorways in the Sand or whatever. I don't think I have any of them at the moment. I don't think I have any Zelazny at the moment. I don't right now have all of my science fiction together in one place, but I think I would know. I would love to revisit some of his work. I'm sure that I will encounter it at some point or other. And then finally, the last prompt is Z is for Z, many Z's in a row, which is the typical orthographical representation of sleeping. And the question is, do you get enough sleep? I do. I do get enough sleep, which renders me a little different from most of you, because most of you get exorbitantly too much sleep. You're sleeping all the time, or so it seems to me. I know that most of you need a good solid 8 to 9 hours out of every 24. And that can't be broken up. That has to be one long comatose stretch where you're totally unaware of the world around you. And you wake up refreshed. You're supposed to wake up refreshed. I don't know anybody who sleeps 9 hours a night who wakes up refreshed. They wake up groaning and reaching for the nearest caffeine. So I don't know the appeal. The appeal has always been a little bit lost on me, but I do get enough sleep. Yes, thanks for asking. And that is the YZ tag. That ends the alphabet tags. So if you've ever used the letters Y or Z, feel free to do this tag, but we're done. We'll have to see what the next great tag series is. Will it come from Jim or somebody else? But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.